Come out of the world, oh my people, seek the truth, avoid the evil, learn Yahweh's ways, Torah Life.
Hello everybody, it's Paul and Lisa with Torah Life Ministries, and today we're going to be studying this week's Torah Parashah number 7, and it's called He Went Out, meaning Jacob. And we're going to be talking about this, and it's there's so much in this week's that some of it has to do with the previous weeks, but it is all setting something up for the future. We're going to look at that right now. Alright everybody, this week's Torah portion covers Genesis 28:10 to 32:3. And we're going to be looking at Jacob, or also known as Yaakov, which is his Hebrew name, going out away from his parents, his father, because last week we saw how he deceived his brother and his father because he listened to his mother because he didn't have faith in Yahweh, and he was scared and he was practically running for his life. Now, he wasn't sure what he was getting himself into, where he was going, but he knew he was leaving a situation that he could not remain in because he went against Yahweh's order, and he tried to take things into his own hands, and because of that he was scared and running for his life. Well, this week we swing forward and we see where he started traveling to go to the land where Rachel came from, so he could find his wife himself. And it says here, when he went out from Beersheba and traveled towards Haran, this is right in Genesis 28:10, it says he came to a certain place and stayed there for the night. So we see it starting off this week right here with this verse, and it said, why did he stay there for the night, everybody? Because he was in the desert and the sun had set. And you can't walk around in the pitch dark. All you can really do is pray and sleep. You don't have any desire to do anything else because it's pitch dark. And even if you wanted to, you can't really see. Well, this goes right along with what I teach, something called the daylight diet. Before we had all this artificial electricity and everything else, it was dark when the sun went down. So people did their activity during the daytime hours, and they were in the habit when the sun went down of going to sleep. They certainly weren't eating, and my principles of the daylight diet support that Yahweh says we shouldn't be eating when it's dark outside. And every known system around the world that promotes longevity will agree that when you eat when it's dark outside, the digestive organs aren't working as well as when it's daylight. So we need to eat during the daylight hours and sleep during the nighttime hours. So we shouldn't even be working too much at nighttime if we can help it. Now, I know some people have to have a nighttime job, but guess what? There's a reason why they call it a graveyard shift. It's just not healthy. And it goes against what Yahweh wanted us to do. So it says here that Jacob, it says he laid there for the night because it was dark. And obviously he couldn't see. And then it says he went down there to sleep. So then Yahweh appeared to Jacob in a dream. And then we have the story of Jacob's ladder. The point here is that Yahweh appeared to Jacob and told him, I will give this land to you and your descendants. And that's a very important key because it fulfills a prophecy or a promise that Yahweh gave the children of Israel, that he gave Abraham, Isaac, and now Jacob. And it goes on to say here that the next morning, Jacob, in line with Yahweh's schedule, in line with his tune, when the sun came up, Jacob got up early in the morning. He got up early in the morning. See, he didn't do it the way people do it today. They stay up really late at night and they get up really late in the morning. It just, you put yourself off Yahweh's time clock when you start doing that. So we have to be on his schedule, and it's so important. Here's the important thing, everyone. In Genesis 29 and 29:11, it talks about when Jacob saw Rachel for the first time, what did he do? He kissed her. It says here that Jacob kissed Rachel and wept out loud. So he didn't just kiss her, he actually cried. You know, he showed some emotion. He didn't just do it, out of a desire, a worldly, fleshly desire. He did it because he was so pleased to see this beautiful woman who was his own family. And it was not yet that he fall in love with her, because then it goes on and says in Genesis 29:18, Jacob had fallen in love with Rachel and said, I will work 7 years in exchange for Rachel, your younger daughter, he told Laban. And then we go on to the story to see how after 7 years he was deceived and he married Leah. And Leah was the twin sister of Rachel. She was the older one. She was born first. And they were almost identical except for their eyes. Leah had very weak eyes, where Rachel had beautiful eyes. And the sages say that the reason why that was is because Leah was crying over and over again because she knew that there were twins born, Jacob and Esau. And it was customary in those days for the older to marry the older and the younger to marry the younger. So she knew how evil Esau was and that she was destined to marry Esau. So she spent her days crying because she didn't want to do that. But then Jacob came along, and Laban deceived him and said, well, you have to marry her first. Or he forced her upon him because Jacob wasn't clever enough to figure it out. And this is what happened. Now, some of the sages say that since Jacob deceived his father and his brother, he was just getting paid back, and he was being deceived as well. Very interesting, and it seems very true. Well, then after this deception, he went to Laban and he said, why'd you deceive me? And Laban just told him about the custom of the older to marry the older, and it wouldn't be right to marry the younger first. But he did say, I will let you marry the younger one if you work for me another 7 years. Or at least that was upon agreed upon. So after Jacob finished at his wedding week, he went to go marry Rachel. Now, here's an issue. Even though Rachel was his rightful wife to begin with because she was the younger, but because of his deception of his father and his brother, that Yahweh was going to give him the blessing to begin with, but because he didn't trust Yahweh and he was deceived himself. So we see how when we get off the plan that Yahweh has for us, we suffer the consequences. And we know that Yahweh didn't want these consequences because it was revealed later on in Torah that a man shall not marry two sisters. So Yahweh didn't want this, but because Jacob got off the plan of Yahweh and didn't trust him, this is the situation he got himself into. But what I find even more interesting was the pattern that we've been following for the last couple of weeks is when Isaac married Rebekah. Isaac was 40 years old and Rebekah was just a teenager. And some even say much younger than that. But this week we see here even a bigger age difference. And why is there such an age difference in the marriages, and why is it so shunned upon today? Well, first of all, the whole marriage situation was handled different. Back then, there had to be a process. It was almost like an arranged marriage, and the father had to approve before the marriage took place. And the man that wanted to marry the woman, or at least the man's family, had to pay a price, a dowry, for their future bride. Well, here we see something very interesting. And sit down, folks, because this one's going to seem very weird. And unless you understand all of Scripture, you're not really going to get this, and it's going to seem wrong almost. But when Jacob actually arrived in the land and first met Rachel, he was 77 years old, and Rachel was only 14 years old. Wow. That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing. So Leah was 14 years old also because they were twins, and that's what most people suspect, or scholars suspect. But 7 years later they got married, so Jacob was 84 years old, and Leah and Rachel were 21 years old. Astonishing. Just astonishing. Now, there's a reason why, people talk about the rights of women and everything else, but there's a reason why men had a lot more wisdom than women in those days, because they were so much older and experienced, where the women were getting married very young at a teenage age and so on, so they relied upon the man. This is why a lot of times the man had to pray for children or pray for the wife or something like that, because he had a lot more experience and a lot more personal time with Yahweh. We see, of course, there are amazing women of the Bible who were older and had amazing wisdom and knowledge, and Yahweh was with them in their prayers. But when you got a teenager versus an 84-year-old, it's a big difference. But that's what we see here, and as weird as it seems, we'll start seeing in the weeks ahead the significance of that, of an 84-year-old marrying a 21-year-old. Now, we know today if a 77-year-old walks up to a 14-year-old and kisses her, will most likely get thrown in jail. But here in the Scriptures, things are different, and things were the way that Yahweh wanted them to be if you stuck to His plan. and it's just very interesting, the timing of all these things and as well. And of course, some people are confused this week because we see Jacob actually marrying 2 women, actually 4 women, because he also got their maidservants. And it's very interesting because doesn't Yahweh talk against polygamy? Well, this is another interesting one. If polygamy is against Yahweh's laws and guidelines, why is there so much about this here? And why are they allowing it? Why is Yahweh allowing this? Well, Yahweh doesn't love it, and he says in the scriptures, 1 man for 1 woman. He sets that example when he says Adam for Eve, and the man shall cleave to his wife, not wives. So he doesn't love it, but just like when Yeshua says, because your hearts are hardened, Yahweh hates divorce, but he will allow it under certain circumstances. So he hates it, but he allows it. The same thing with the polygamy here. He doesn't love it, he hates it. And the scripture shows this week, the word hate doesn't mean hate the way we mean it today. It just means likes less often, because it says Jacob hated Leah. He didn't hate her, he just loved her less. So Yahweh hates, or he likes less than when man and a woman are married together. But he doesn't just hate that when in a polygamy situation, he just prefers a man and a woman to be married together. But this crazy backwards world we live today. Now let me straighten this out, everybody. I'm not promoting polygamy by any means. And it shows in every situation in Scripture where polygamy was involved, there were extra hardships, unnecessary hardships that were involved as well. So that's just another way for Yahweh to hint that this isn't the right way and this isn't my plan. But let me explain how crazy and backward this world is today. This world is so backwards and crazy today that, you have people today accepting something that Yahweh calls an abomination. Homosexuality, and people wanting to get married, homosexual marriages and everything else that's being accepted today, and people are against polygamy. That's absolutely crazy. Now I tell you, everybody, I am not supporting polygamy, but when you talk about polygamy versus gay marriages, Yahweh is clear that he absolutely despises one, and the other one, as much as he hates, is at least accepted into his program here. So we just look at the world we're in today, and you have people running around supporting gay marriages but against polygamy. And again, I'm not for polygamy, but it's so crazy in this world that you be against polygamy but for gay marriage. It's absolutely crazy because Yahweh calls that an abomination, people. It's an abomination. Well, we look here in what he says. So Jacob married Leah and Rachel, and there were many hardships because of that. But finally he's set free to go back to his land of his father, and we'll see next week when he goes back to the land and he meets his brother Esau and what happened with that. And we can't leave out this week, everybody, all the sons that were born to Leah and Rebekah, and the tribes that they created. And then we see one of those tribes was the tribe of Judah, the line of Judah. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and none of them were actually Jewish. They were actually Hebrews because Abraham came as a Hebrew. But we see here that now the tribe of Judah and all the other tribes are created. And then we get into the tribes of where they are, because when the tribe of Judah was taken into captivity, it was returned to Israel, but all the other tribes were dispersed around the world. And we say tribe, some of you don't have no idea what we're talking about because you don't study the Torah, but a tribe is basically comes from the lineage or the sons of Jacob, the 12 sons he had. And we see all about those tribes, which we'll be talking about more in the future as well. But that's a big significance this week, because when Jacob dies, he actually gives a blessing to each of them. And those blessings come true, or they're coming through. And then we see of the children of Rebekah, we see Benjamin and Joseph, and the amazing thing that's going to happen with that coming up soon. That's the Torah portion for this week, everybody. There's a lot more to talk about and read, so I recommend everyone study it. But we do the Torah portion every week here at Torah Life Ministries. You can go to TorahLifeMinistries.tv. Please let your friends know. Every week we do the Torah portion here, and then we have our health videos at rawlifehealthshow.com. If you have any comments or questions, please post them below the video. Until then, everybody, have a great week, have a great Shabbat, and we'll see you again next week here on Torah Life Ministries.
Come out of the world, oh my people, seek the truth, avoid the evil, learn Yahweh's ways.